your record phase. Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Ladies Power Lunch. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, our very special guest is Shannon Daniels, and she's going to be sharing with us about how we should really approach this idea of speaking more to get our messages out there for 2023. Shannon, the floor is yours.
Well, hello again. Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to talk on this topic. This is something that is really near and dear to my heart. As I said, I'm one of those weirdos who loves getting up in front of people and speaking, and I'm kind of awkward when I do it. I used to feel really uncomfortable when I gave into that. That's where I found that my authenticity was showing. I was able to build trust with and connect with my audience. So all of these words that you've been coming up with, vulnerability, authenticity, captivating, trust, connection, related to charisma, all of these are really important when it comes to speaking. And what I don't want to do today is sit here and talk at you. I want this to be a conversation today. I want you to ask questions, and I want to talk about things that are important to you and what you want to learn around public speaking and communication, because I find that it's most important when someone comes into something to be able to take something away from whatever that presentation is or whatever that meeting is. So I want you all to feel like you're taking something away from this. So I want to talk about what's most important to you. And I know, Divya, you had queued up a few questions for us to talk about, but if it's okay with you, I want to just go ahead and open the floor and see what kind of questions that people have, or you can type them in the chat and we can, Divya, while you're thinking of your questions, if you don't have any ready already, Divya, you can go ahead and start throwing some questions at me that you had. So we'll start there. Does anybody have a question? Or Divya, did you want to start out with a few of the questions you had?
Mute. Unmuting. Unmuted voices, right, Marianne? Congratulations to Marianne on publishing her new book, and I hope she'll post in the chat the link so that we can all download it. So, yeah, my questions were structuring your talk. Is there a format that we can follow that can help us? I mean, the truth is, if you even give the exact same talk to two audiences, it's not going to be exactly the same each time. But is there a structure that's optimal?
Yeah, the structure really varies based on your speech or presentation. You never just jump right into structure. What you want to start with in every single presentation, speech, talk, whatever it is that you're giving is, who is my audience? What do they care about? What are their wants, needs, and pain points? What are their values? What are their beliefs? What's important to them? You have to start there as a baseline for absolutely everything regarding a presentation you give, because you're not talking to a room full of yourself. You're talking to a room full of other people. And if you're not talking about what's important to them, then they're not going to be engaged by you. They're not going to feel like you have that charisma that we were just talking about, right? A great story that I have is I was working with the CEO of a fintech company, and he was going out to present to all the big banks, all the major banks, to try to get them to buy his product and white label it. And he had put together this presentation and he hired me to help him refine it and deliver it and all of that, because there was a lot riding on it. Well, in his speech, he had several things that just did not matter to his audience. After we had outlined the audience profile and his purpose and his objective and all of that, it just didn't matter. And so I kept asking him to pull certain things out. He was like, yeah, I understand what you're saying. It's not important. I'll take it out. I'd come back a week later for our next session. It was right back in there. And I kept saying, what does that matter for me, the audience? Why do I, as your potential buyer, as someone you're trying to convince that this product is important for them to have, why do I need to hear this? What's important about it? Well, it's not important to them. It doesn't matter. Well, then why is it in there? Well, because I want to say it. But it's not about what you want to say. Ultimately, he took it out. He secured some major partnerships. But that's the number one baseline to always start with. So you never just jump into structure. Structure is driven by your audience. How are they going to listen to you? how are they going to interpret your message, right? It's similar to writing a business plan. You have to lay these things out. What's my audience? Or who's my audience? What's my purpose for speaking? Am I trying to inspire and motivate? Am I trying to inform and educate? Am I trying to persuade, or am I trying to entertain? Those are different speeches, right? So first you have to figure that out. What is your objective? What is your call to action? What action do you want people to take as a result of hearing you speak? Do you want them to change a behavior? Do you want them to schedule an appointment with you or maybe buy your book? Do you want them to donate to a cause? Right? There's lots of different calls to action that can come out of that particular speech or presentation. You have to lay that foundation first. And what I do, I actually have developed a program that I call Concept to Conclusion. That's a speech writing boot camp, as I call it, that goes step by step. And when it comes to developing your speech structure, that is step 7 in the process. We do audience, then purpose, then objective, then potential topics, then core message, then key points and subtopics. Then we get into your structure. And once you know those things, you can help determine what the right structure is for your presentation. And there's several different structures. I'll give you a few. One is a chronological structure. And a chronological would be something like least to greatest or greatest to least, oldest to newest or newest to oldest. It can also be step-by-step instructions. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do that. Step 3, do this, right? That's chronological. Another way is spatial, which is you're presenting based on physical space. So think outside in or inside out, giving directions, talking about different regions and moving around those regions, right? That can be a spatial type of talk. Then you have cause and effect type talks where you're showing a relationship between cause and effect. And you can either start with the cause and build to the effects, or you can start with the effect and share those causes that are leading into that effect. So you can go either way there. There's topical, which is what it sounds like. You're arranging things in order by topics. Or there's problem solution. So you're sharing a problem and a solution, and you can, again, go either way with it. Start with problem, build to solutions, or start with solutions building into a problem, right? So there's lots of different structures, but it's important to know all those underlying things first before you just put that structure in place. Otherwise, you're just kind of guessing, and the structure you've chosen may not fit the topic, the audience, your purpose, or your objective. So that's really what you want to think about when you're thinking about your speech structure. Any questions around structures? I see a note in here from Lorna. Exactly. This is not just within a speech or a presentation. This is within writing. This is within your LinkedIn profile. Absolutely. This is content, basic content, right? And how you're structuring it and putting it out into the world.
Have a question regarding the call to action, particularly if it's something that you're selling. You've already mentioned to us you've got a course and you just kind of wove it into what you were doing, which is a way to do it. But it doesn't necessarily invite people to sign on the dotted line. So I'm wondering, in your experience, what has worked best for people who are going to be on stage giving info, and it's stages, this is a stage, but being on stage giving information that's useful information, they can use it without going any further. But what's the best way to ask for their participation in a program, buy a book, whatever?
Yep. Generally, that's at the end of the speech or the presentation, and you can drop little nuggets along the way. Like I mentioned, I have a program, right? It's not a hard sell on the program, but you mention it and you build into it. And that keeps it from being too salesy and too over the top. And it also is a fine art on how you drop it in there and how you mention it. I could have said something like, if you sign up for my concept to conclusion program, that's this much money and is over this many weeks, you'll learn all the. That's a little too hard of a sell and a little too pushy and a little too salesy, to the point of what Dr. Devia was mentioning earlier of things that I'm going to talk about today. So generally the call to action comes at the end, and you'll want to build towards that call to action. This is why understanding your audience purpose and objective are the most important first things you have to lay out And that objective is your call to action. And each time you give a presentation, your objective will change. Your purpose may not change. Like, for example, your purpose may be building my business, obtaining new clients, right? But your specific call to action for meeting A may be sign up for a free consultation, or for meeting B, it may be buy a book, or for meeting C, it may be enroll in my program before we leave here today and you'll save X%, right? It really depends. And then you also always want to be respectful and make sure you can share a call to action during a presentation, because in some types of presentations, they do not allow it. Like when I'm hired to speak at corporate things, not allowed. Like MasterCard straight up in our contract said, you're not allowed to sell while you're up there presenting to our employees, period, end of story. If an employee approaches you after the fact and starts asking you questions and wants to hire you, that's a different story, but there is no selling from the stage, right? So you want to make sure that that's okay. And there's probably too much to go into here to teach you how to build that as you're going through your presentation, but there's lots of ways to build up to your call to action. And speaking is a really great way to show through that speech or presentation that, listen, I am the expert in this. I have the knowledge in this. I have the experience in this, and I can help you with whatever this is that I'm talking about. And then when your call to action comes at the end, you've basically been building a soft call to action the whole way. You're building up to that. And then when you say, schedule an appointment with me, people are going to be like, yes, I want to schedule an appointment with you, right? So a lot of times that call to action comes at the end because you don't want them to walk away without knowing what to do. And I can't tell you how many people I work with that don't even put a call to action into their presentation or speech. And that is perhaps the most infuriating thing. It's better to have a bad call to action than no call to action at all, right? And so don't forget to ask, own your power, stand up in there and be confident in it and ask. Does that answer your question, Lorna? Great. What other questions do we have? Yes, Elizabeth.
I have a question about if you have any advice for people to feel more comfortable when they're giving speeches. Like, do you have any tips on that?
Yes. So when it comes to fear and anxiety, everybody's a little different at what they respond to and what helps them to feel more comfortable on stage. The most important things, hands down, are preparation and practice. And in one of our breakouts, Mina was talking about how she didn't even know if she was going to be able to give a speech. I hope you don't mind if I use your example. Do you mind, Mina? Okay. At her father's retirement, but she went ahead and prepared something. So she was prepared ahead of time and ready to go in there and deliver it if they said yes. So preparation is number one. And I always liken that to, you wouldn't start a business without writing a business plan, right? So why would you get up on stage and give a speech without ever preparing for that speech? Now, there are times where you're going to be thrown up there and said, hey, can you jump up there and say a few words? That's a different story. That's where I'll work with people on improv to get them more comfortable in those types of situations and being able to adapt. The more you do it, the more comfortable you're going to become on stage with doing that. So that's a piece of it is too. But preparation and then practice. I can't tell you how many people write their speech out and then sit behind the computer and just read it over and over and never say it out loud, or don't even read it over and over to at least practice it in their head. Now, I like to use the example in this case of actors or actresses getting on stage, right? How many of you have been to see a play? Either on Broadway or your local theater, or right? Those actors and actresses, do they get up on stage without having dress rehearsals and practices? No. So you don't want to get up on the stage and deliver a speech or presentation without practicing. If you get up on stage and the first time you're actually saying this out loud, even if that stage is Zoom, then you're in essence doing your dress rehearsal in front of your audience. What do you think the success rate is with that? Pretty low. What do you think the comfort level is with that? pretty low because you're not going to be comfortable with the way you're presenting. And like I said, it's one thing to read it, but it's very important to say it out loud and to do it over and over. I have certain presentations that I've given so many times now. I know them like the back of my hand, but I still, before I go present that again in a new setting, practice it out loud at least 3 times. It doesn't matter that I've given it 100 times before, I still practice it because we speak very differently than we think and we read. And so it's really important to practice out loud. And that the preparation and the practice are the 2 absolute biggest things you can do to get comfortable on stage. And then if you're a newbie to this, just do it. Just try it. Go in front of groups that you're comfortable with. LPL's great for this, right? Getting in front of a group of your peers that you feel comfortable with. Practice in front of family, practice in front of friends, colleagues, whoever it may be. Just start getting yourself comfortable with the idea of speaking in front of people and build out from there. Your first one, you're probably not going to want, yes, in front of your dog, Lorna, I love it. The first one, you're probably not going to want to get up and do a keynote in front of 1,000 people, right? Especially if you're kind of nervous about it. So practice with smaller audiences and build yourself up to it. Then there's a lot of other techniques that can help you reduce fear and anxiety and feel more comfortable on the stage. Showing up ahead of time and checking out and seeing what the lay of the land is going to be, right? Where am I going to be standing? Where's the stage? What does the audience look like? What does the lighting look like? What's the technology going to be like? So you're not fumbling with it 5 minutes before you're ready to go and feel all nervous, right? There's breathing exercises, positive visualizations are great. Regarding breathing, I love doing box breathing. Who in here is familiar with box breathing? Okay, so most of you. Okay, so basically box breathing is breathing in, kind of what Dr. Davia was having us do earlier. It's breathing in, holding, and then breathing out, and doing that in a cycle so that you can start to reduce your stress hormones. And then there's also something called power posing. Who's heard of power posing? All right, a few people. We're going to do an activity. Who wants to do an activity? Come on, let's see all the hands. All right, so power posing, what it does is it actually scientifically, it's been studied, it raises your testosterone levels and it lowers your stress hormones. So it makes you feel more comfortable and more powerful and takes a little bit of those nervous jitters away. So you can walk onto that stage feeling super confident. And since we're sitting, we're going to do some we can do while we're sitting. So one is the victory pose. Who knows what the victory pose is? Who's got a guess? There you go. Victory, right? And so it's just holding your hands up in this pose for 3 minutes and just kind of letting it all come in. But you have to think and feel it, right? You can't just be like, okay, victory, done, right? You have to be like, what's that feeling you get when you cross the finish line? What's that feeling you get when you book a new client? What's that feeling when you get when you help someone overcome their barriers and reach their potential, that you just feel so good inside, right? You want to channel all of that and hold this pose, and that's just going to start making you feel victorious and feel strong, and you're going to pull all that testosterone in, like I said, and lower those stress hormones so you're not feeling as jittery and overwhelmed, right? It'll increase your confidence. You can learn more about power posing by looking up Angela Cuddy, and I can put that information in the channel afterward. Please don't let me forget, Dr. Davia. But she has a TED Talk on this, and she's done a lot of research around it. There's also the Superwoman pose, right? Hands on your hip, chest out, look up to the sky. If you feel like flying, you can fly too, right? Just look up and feel super, absolutely super. Another one you can do is you can take your hands, your fingers, and interlace them like this, stick them behind your head, lean back in your chair, and then I don't know if I have the room to do it, but kick your feet up on your desk. And this is a powerful pose because it's like, I am owning this. This is mine today. I have it, right? So those are just a few that you can do, but there's lots of different power poses that you can do. So check out Angela Cuddy and her TED Talk on these things. And I could go on and on. about fear and anxiety and feeling comfortable on stage. But I really have found in working with a lot of people to overcome this, that it varies depending on the individual of what's behind that lack of comfort on stage. But at the core, it generally comes down to a couple of things: fear of being judged and fear of messing up. Those are the two big things. And what I always like to remind people of is that public speaking is the #1 fear in the world. It's usually ranked above death, which is mind-blowing to me because I'd rather have to get up on a stage than speak than die. But people rank it above death and spiders and snakes and everything else as their #1 fear. So you're not alone if you are kind of a nervous speaker or someone who doesn't feel comfortable on stage. So something to remember is, just by getting up there, you are doing something that most people wouldn't do. And when you're in the audience and you see someone that's kind of a nervous speaker or who's fumbling or messing up, how do you generally feel? Someone chime in.
You feel nervous for them.
Mm-hmm. Carlene?
That they're not confident in themselves.
Okay.
I
Is there any
usually
other?
feel like some compassion, to be honest, for them. Like, like you're gonna be okay. I try to send them some positive vibes.
I see a lot of heads nodding. Who else feels that way? That compassion for that person up there that's struggling, right? Oh my gosh, I really feel for them. So you're not sitting back judging them though, right? You're not making fun of them. So
Never.
if you do get up there and you're starting to feel nervous or flustered, keep in mind that your audience is rooting for you and they're not judging you, right? Unless it's some kind of speaking competition, then it might be a different story, but they're generally rooting for you. So that should help you to feel more comfortable and confident on stage as well. What other questions do you all have?
Well, we just have a few minutes, and I would love for you to just talk a little bit more about like telling our story and being engaging.
Yes. So when it comes to telling your story, storytelling is one of the most important aspects of public speaking. They say attention spans are waning. Well, that's not necessarily true. Yes, our attention spans are less than a goldfish these days, and that's because of all the shiny objects and notifications dinging in our face all the time. But why can we then sit down and binge Netflix all day long? Or Hulu or HBO or whatever it is, right? It's because there's a story and you get involved with the story, you get involved with the characters, right? You just want to keep going. It's like leaves on the cliffhanger and I want that next episode, right? So storytelling is really important. And when it comes to developing a talk, especially if you're someone that has a book or has a business and you've developed a signature speech or are working on developing a signature speech, I very much like to help people come up with a plug and play speech, which is where the foundation is all there. So you're still imparting that knowledge, you're still sharing that message you want to get out there, but the plug and play pieces come with the stories that you tell, right? Or with the facts and figures and information that you plug in. And that's where it's so important to know your audience. If you know who your audience is, even if you don't specifically know, if you have a general idea of who your audience is and what they care about, then you can line up several stories that are relevant to your message. Have those stories prepared, have those stories practiced, have those stories ready to go. And then your general target audience should remain pretty similar, right? You may have subcategories and stuff that are a little different, but your general target audience should remain about the same. Then you can pick and choose the right stories to put in at the right time for the right audience. Because when you're telling a story, you want to tug on their heartstrings. It's emotion first, logic and reason second. So many people try to shove knowledge and logic and reason down people's throats. How many times does that work for us? Right? We're all heart-centered and entrepreneurs in here, right? There's a reason why we support one another and care about one another, and it's because we understand one another. So it's coming to the conclusion of in general, who is my audience? What is their profile? What do they care about? What's meaningful for them? And then selecting the right stories that you can connect with them over.
Thank you. I think you have, Shannon, managed to cover the questions that I had, like how to structure your talk. And you mentioned that, structure is something that you want to focus on a little bit later down in the creating of your talk. You just talked about choosing your story and making it engaging, and you spent some time at the beginning talking about selling from the stage and not being salesy. My invitation to everybody would be to go ahead and connect with Shannon if you have other questions about speaking and being a better speaker. And I'll even go so far as to post a prompt in the Ladies Power Lunch Facebook group so that you can ask your questions and Shannon can respond to them if that's okay. Shannon, how can people connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I think I'm connected with a lot of you on LinkedIn already. You can connect with me through the LPL and Captive portal where you all came into the Zoom today on the people page there. You have the ability to use my booking link and book some time with me there, or send me a direct message. You can also message me through the LPL Facebook group. And then if you're interested in more public speaking and asking questions about that, I do a complimentary 30-minute skills assessment. So if this is something you're really wanting to try to do more of this year, you can go to my website, which is speaksuccess.com. And the speak is not with a K, it's with a C. I'll drop it in the chat again, SPEAC success.com. And you can book a complimentary skills assessment with me. And basically what we do in there is you come with a very short something that you've prepared, some kind of speech or presentation or elevator pitch. It's 3 to 5 minutes. You deliver it to me, and I immediately give you praise and polish. And then we make some edits, and then you do it again to see where the difference is in there. So you're automatically getting some feedback that's going to help you be a better speaker. And then we can talk about your plans for the future and what you may need from the perspective of any kind of coaching or assistance with public speaking.
I love that. That's beautiful. Guys, I really like to stay on time and we're right up on 2 o'clock. And so thank you, Shannon, for being our speaker today. Really appreciate you. And what I will do is I will post the recording